So, good afternoon, everybody. It's me again, Paul Woodadge, here at World War II TV for an exciting show, another movie special. We did our A Call to Spy special a couple of weeks ago with Sarah Megan Thomas about her movie about the SOE agents. And now we've got Alain de Levita, who is a Dutch film producer, to talk about his forthcoming film about the Scheldt. Good afternoon, Alain. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
So it's a big subject, and in my research, the Dutch you've made some movies recently. I mean, not you personally, about the Holocaust and resistance, but in terms of war movies, it's been a long time. Soldier of Orange is the last one I can think of as a big Dutch war epic. So why has it taken so long for you to make a big war film?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. The most important one is that the Netherlands is a small market.
Yeah.
So, and a war movie costs a lot of money. So actually, a war movie on a big scale can only be done once every 10 years. Actually, the last one was actually called Black Book from Paul Verhoeven.
Yeah.
That was a big budget film. Maybe not a big film in terms of what you see in on the screen with battle scenes, but it was a big film for the Netherlands at least. So that was one. So then I did another film called Banker of Resistance. That was a couple years ago, but that was not really. There was a movie that was about a banker who funded the whole resistance in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
But it was not a war movie in the sense of that you see a lot of war.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, as you say, it's a lot of budget required. But these days, with CGI and things like that, it gives even lesser filmmakers an opportunity to bring things on a grander scale. I mean, obviously, I've watched the trailer a couple of times, and the scenes with the gliders. I mean, it's anything it rivals A Bridge Too Far in terms of the scope. But clearly, you didn't have 100 gliders. It was all done with the magic of computers. But what I'm really intrigued about is why you chose the Battle of the Scheldt, because it's, for most people, it's a really complicated story. I mean, 4 operations to take that area there. It's something that I find even most military historians would kind of sigh a bit before trying to explain it, because it hasn't got the perhaps simple to explain of something like D-Day, which is just landing on the beaches and going up. It's a complicated one. Did you choose to do a war movie first and then choose the Scheldt, or was it always the Scheldt? I'm intrigued how you came to that subject.
Okay, well, actually, I was approached by the VFonds Fund, which is a veterans fund in the Netherlands, a very big organization that also does all the remembrance and all the events, museums that deals about World War II. And they approached me because it's this year is 75 years after the liberation of the Netherlands, and so there was a whole celebration year, which obviously went nowhere because of the Corona crisis.
Yeah.
There were all kinds of events, but what they thought was important, and what I think is important, to have the younger generation learn about World War II, and to have a new now that all the people who experienced the World War II are almost not there anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It's important to have a new audience, a younger audience, learn about how it is to be in a war and what happened. And so they approached me because they thought the best way to do that is with a big film, and obviously I agree as a film producer. So then we had to find a arena, so to speak, where to for the movie. So strangely enough, I thought that all the stories about World War II were already filmed or under the intentions of audiences. But that was not true. There were a couple of big events that were never filmed or were never brought under the attention of a big audience. And the Battle of the Scheldt was a typical one because it was very important. For us, it was not so complicated, actually. The Scheldt is a river that runs to Antwerp. Antwerp was liberated, and in Zealand, the Germans occupied the islands, and therefore the ships could not reach Antwerp, and therefore it was impossible to deliver goods to the troops that were already moving towards Berlin. Actually, people thought that the Netherlands would be liberated, but Montgomery decided to go straight on to Berlin. So then Zealand still was occupied. The Scheldt was not free, and it had to be liberated. And therefore, the Canadians especially went over this dam called the Slough Dam, which the island is called Walche. It's not an easy word to pronounce in English.
Yeah,
but
Walcheren.
It was an island connected to the mainland with a long dam, the Slough Dam, and so in order to deliver to free Walche, they had to go over that dam. And for us as filmmaker, it was a great arena. It was Zealand is as flat as can be. It was a very interesting battleground, a horrible battleground. And the Battle of the Scheldt is also named the Forgotten Battle because it was very important, but it never got the attention that it deserved. So there were numerous reasons for us as filmmakers to go there and look at that arena, and we got all excited, and that's why we chose it.
Well, I mean that's why I wanted to speak to someone from the production, because in terms of Canadian history, and I know your movie will touch, it touches on a British glider pilot and Dutch resistance and the Germans, but for the Canadians, it's as important to their national identity as Vimy Ridge in the First World War. I mean, it was their single biggest losses of a campaign in World War II. So that as soon as they saw this announcement about a film, their ears prick up, because it's something like Dunkirk for the British, or it's a very important one, and yet you're so right, because it hasn't been touched in movies, and often when it's touched in books, it gets used as a stick to beat Montgomery with. The people who don't like General Montgomery say that his mistake in taking Antwerp and not taking the estuary was, and it was a mistake. There's no getting away from it. But it's used as a political argument rather than talking actually about the 2 months of fighting that was very costly, very complicated, and brought a lot of hardship to those Dutch people. So my next question leading is where did you get your information from? Because I was checking my own library. I don't have a single book apart from Mark Zelke, the Canadian historians. I have to get a bit from here, a bit from there, because Arnhem, for example, which is the other famous Netherlands battle. I mean, I've got a shelf on Arnhem, but the Walcheren, it's much. So where did you and the writers and the director, where did you get your information from?
Well, there's a couple of historians, Tobias van Gent and Hans Sackers, wrote a book about the Battle of the Scheldt, and so we went over there to talk to them and to a lot of historians. There was one guy called Hoebeke, and he wrote a really thick book about the Battle of the Slough Dam. So we just went to Zealand, went to the museum, talked to the historians, read all the books that were available on the subject, and the more we read about it, the more we got excited and interested in the subject, and especially in that horrible taking of the Slough Dam. And this film is not only a film to learn about how it is to be in a war for young people, because three main characters are young. It's not only about making the right or wrong choices and what the results are of making those choices, but it's also and I want to stretch that, it's also a film to honor the Canadians who risked or gave their lives to liberate the Netherlands. And so we completely rebuilt the Sludam in Lithuania. And I remember very well that the director and we were standing there filming this scene with extras and stuntmen going over the dam. And once we stood there, we both have kids. We realized suddenly the sacrifice that the Canadians made for us, and once you actually saw the soldiers going over that dam, because it became a reality when you film it, it really hit us, and we were really struck and emotional about it. That because then you suddenly realize, wait a minute, there were people who came all the way from Canada to go over the dam to liberate the Netherlands. So the film really is in honor of those brave soldiers that gave their life and liberated Zealand, and therefore it's the beginning of the end of World War II from that side of the.
Well, I'm watching the comments coming on YouTube, and there are Canadians watching who I think are very pleased by your response there, and that brings me to the next type of question, which is when you're making a war epic, broadly speaking, there are two types. You either go the action-packed, not based on reality, the Guns of Navarone, Where Eagles Dare, that kind of Kelly's Heroes, or you go into the Longest Day, Bridge Too Far type thing. But the minute you set yourself up as doing something historical, which clearly you have, you're then bound by the constraints of history about what really happened. You've got to get your research right, and also you've got to explain a very complicated battle for an audience of young people who don't necessarily understand the context of what was happening before and what happened after. So that's my next question is, you've got this massively complicated battle that clearly the sacrifice of Canadians moved you and moved the directors and the writers, and yet you've got to make it into a story that a modern audience can understand. So as I understand, you focused on a few characters and then set them in the bigger picture. So just kind of describe roughly how you tell the story through these individuals' points of view.
Okay, so what we did is as I mentioned, there were three characters. One is a British glider pilot who wants to be a hero, wants to go to Arnhem to the front of the lines to bomb Germans, and but the plane get hits and he and crashes in Zealand, and in order to survive you have to find dry clothes and just hide for the Germans. So that's a completely different result of what he actually wanted to do and what actually happened. Then there's this young girl who works at the mayor office, and once the Zealand was occupied, it's an important story because what most Netherlands did during the war was nothing. They just kept on doing their thing. So if the mayor is under German rules, then you just type for the Germans. And so we wanted to tell a story about what it is to do nothing. Then her brother gets caught, he's in the resistance, and as a result, I don't want to give away too much of the story.
No, of course.
He also makes a change and joins the resistance at some point. And the third person is even more important, is a young Dutch guy who joins the Nazis and fights first at the Eastern Front, and then has to fight against his own people in Zealand, and obviously he he experiences what it is to be on the wrong side. And this is also an important story because a lot of there are more Dutch who soldiers that died under the the German flag than under the Dutch flag, which we don't learn in school at all, but it's the truth. And it also mirrors to what's happening now in modern times: fundamentalism, extremism, how wrong information, draws people to extremism, to joining fights like in Syria. It's also about how you get the information, and if you have no future, no work, no nothing, and you see a nice uniform and a future fighting for a free Europe, we wanted to paint a picture that's how that happens and how that translates to modern times. So those three people are thrown into that arena in Zealand and have to survive. And hopefully it's these three stories are very identifiable for young people these days, and hopefully paints a picture of how it is to be in a war and what decisions you do or do not make.
Well, I mean, that's very interesting because as soon as I did the research and I realized you had a Dutch character fighting for the Germans, I was pleasantly surprised, because that is one aspect that people forget. I mean, as you said, I mean, the Dutch raised, it was 2 or 3 SS divisions and things like that. And we've had several movies about the resistance, and you said Black Book and what have you. And that's another aspect of it. And then there's the other side, is those who fought for the Germans because, as you say, at the time they thought that was possibly the best option, and then others who were doing nothing, as I live in France. And we have this idea, Americans coming to Normandy and Brits have this idea that everybody in France or the Netherlands is either a resistance worker or a collaborator. And the reality is most people are in the middle. They're just trying to kind of survive day to day, and they're judging it day to day, and they're getting information. They're trying to make their best decisions. So it's so fascinating stuff. So, and I like the fact that you're also trying to bring it relevant for a modern audience, because there's been that long debate on Twitter and Facebook about the original Dunkirk movie from 1958 and the modern Christopher Nolan movie. And the Nolan movie is clearly aimed at a kind of a younger, more modern audience. And yet the older movie is perhaps more historically accurate, but it's an old movie that young people wouldn't watch. So you have to be conscious as a producer that you've got to make something that will satisfy the middle-aged military guys like me, but also bring in the 16 and 17-year-olds who want to learn about their past. And that can't be easy. So it can't be easy balancing all those factors.
Well, and therefore we have these very personal stories combined with real war stuff, real battle grounds, a lot of CGI. And, there will always be 1 or 2 people that find something that is not correct. But we showed this when we were still in editing to historians to look at it and to see if they would, cry or get angry and they were very happy with the results and said it's very accurate. We had a great production designer, and we went through, and also our director Matthijs van Heiningen goes through length to be historical correct. Obviously, it's not a documentary, but a movie. So you cannot completely be accurate in terms of that everything goes exactly as it went, because it's fictional characters. But it's based on people that have existed and based on stuff that really happened there. And so we hope to that the older generation or audience will see a historical correct war movie which really tells a story about what happens in the south of the Netherlands, and that a younger audience sees the same, but in addition, identifies with the choices that you make when you're thrown into a horrible war.
Well, it seems to me you've got that balance, from what I understand, perfectly done. And I sent the questions to your team, and I asked the same question to Sarah on about her A Call to Spy film. And it's that Tom Hanks quote. When Tom Hanks was making Band of Brothers, he said, there are two types of authenticity. There is one that says all the buttons are right and all the ammunition is correct and all the buildings look like they did in the photos. And he said that's a relatively easy thing to accomplish. Although I do admit that Tom Hanks had £500 million to throw at Band of Brothers, so he had a lot more money. But he then said the thing that's much harder is literally the motivations and the nature of the interplay between the characters. So does that ring true with you as a producer? You've got authenticity on a practical, is that the right badge on the sleeve for that era of the war? But then you've got the authenticity of having people interact with each other in a way that is period true, but also, as you say, relevant for a younger audience. Is that the big struggle? Getting balancing those things.
Well, it is, and I totally agree. I always say that the making of a movie is the easiest part. To think of the story, to make a script that's correct, that really works, and also attracts money, so people believe in your film. That's the hardest. And the making is something we can do. Every film has to be correct. Actually, I made a film in the same area. It's called The Storm, and it was about the big flood of 1953. Now you must know that in the south in Zealand, the people who lived there after the floods, they didn't talk about it at all. They completely buried the event and went on to rebuild their land. So decennia later, I come with this big movie called The Storm. So it was very sensitive, and they didn't actually at first want to be confronted with the event. So you have to be historically correct, and you actually always have to be and that doesn't even. That's not only the case for historical films, also with modern films. You always have to create a world or an arena that is real, or that's perceived to be real, at least. So yeah, but the way people interact in 1944, how they moved, these decisions that were made, and how they and how people who lived there dealt with the war. That's really another story and another historically complicated thing to get right, and you have to do a lot of research, and so that's what we did. Yeah.
And perhaps we started talking about the fact there hasn't been a big Dutch war movie for quite a few years. Perhaps 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been possible to make a movie acknowledging there were people in the Netherlands who served with the Germans. It was maybe too sensitive. Maybe now is the right time to address that and look at it objectively and say, look, this is what happened. There were some on this side, there were some on that side. And that perhaps couldn't have been done 30 years ago because the audience wouldn't have been prepared for it, possibly.
That's totally correct. And I mean, I'm 60 now, and I know when I was young, we all still hated the Germans, and when they asked for the right way, I live in Amsterdam, and they asked where the central station was, we always pointed them in the wrong direction. And now, a couple of decennia later, we do business with Germans, and it completely changed. I mean, we move on, so yes, you can touch on sensitive subjects, and I think it's important, because what I learned in school when I was young, and what I learned now about the reality of the Dutch dealt with the war, how many people actually were in the resistance and how many people did nothing, how many soldiers went to the Nazis and how many went to the Dutch army. It's all very interesting, and it's a complete different picture than the perception I had when I grew up and learned about the World War II. We all learned that all the Dutch were in the resistance, and the Germans, and we taught the Germans a lesson. But it's like, it's not the truth.
That topic has come up quite a lot on my shows. I did a show with Danish historians talking about the same thing. There were Danish resistance, there were Danish with the SS, the same things happened in France. It seems to be as we're 75 years on, something that is coming up in conversation more. But I'm just checking what questions we're getting coming in on YouTube. So the question we had is, how does a glider pilot on his way to Operation Market Garden get into the Scheldt? Is that he's just the aircraft is hit on his way to Market Garden, he ends up in Zealand? Is that how it happens?
That's how it happens, but he doesn't end up in the Scheldt because well, also this is something we looked at. To fly to Market Garden, you don't go over the Scheldt, you go more to the north. So they end up in another part of Zealand, more to the north of the Scheldt. So they actually have to cross the river to get to the other islands and to try to connect with the Allies.
And was that to get an Allied soldier or in that area before the battle starts for purposes of the drama? I mean, otherwise you'd have to wait till the Canadians arrive. So that's
That's
okay.
The battle with the Canadians is at the end of the film.
Yeah. So, and this next question I've get from people is, are you portraying any real commanders within the Canadians? For example, some of the Black Watch commanders or the 5th Brigade. Are you putting any real names to some of those characters? I know you have your fictional heroes or protagonists, but are there any real characters portrayed?
No, we don't, and that's not because we don't want to honor them, but it's because we want to be. If you portray a real character, you come into a lot of different territory, because then you have to be completely correct. So also because the Canadian in the film is actually the force that liberates the Sloedam, but it's not. They're not characters in the film that. They're not one of the 3 characters. So no, we had no real historical people in the film. No.
No, it's just it's probably a wise move. So the talking about the authenticity, and you're the producer, but the directors and writers, and when you're balancing up the history and the drama and the entertainment and storytelling, and who kind of gets the final decision? Is it the producer that gets the final call? The director? Is it? Do you agree? Do you have decisions, committees? Who makes the final call?
The producer makes the final call, but once you get into the area that I have to make that call, you're not a real brilliant producer, because in this film I worked very closely with Matthijs. We actually made the film together. So all the decisions you make together. The only point that the producer makes the final decision is when there's either a conflict or people don't know what to do, or we don't know what to do. And then at the end of the day, everybody looks at the producer, because he has to make the decision, because he is responsible for the whole product. And but artistically, you make all the decisions together. Or when it comes to taste, I tend to follow the director, because otherwise I should not have hired the director. So, but if there's a good relationship between the producer and the director, you make those decisions together. And sometimes I win, and sometimes he wins. It's a matter of, argument. Who has the right idea of the best idea that we both think, and it's when you have a director as Matthijs, it's a fun and fantastic adventure to do with together, because you're actually on the set in another country, and it's so complicated. You have to make so many decisions, and so you depend on each other, and you have to actually win the battle together.
Metaphorically, yeah.
So it's not a very hierarchical thing, only when it goes really, really well.
Yeah. So tell me, where are you now with the film? Because obviously, with coronavirus and things, the film industry has been hammered this year, like every industry has. So where are you now? You have cinema released. I mean, Netflix is for the Western audience, but where are we? Tell us what the state of play is right now.
Well, we're close to the finish line. We have a couple more weeks. We go in release on the 17th of December in the Netherlands, and so we're still doing sound and mix and music,
right,
and grading. So we're in the final stages of the film. The film is locked, so we have a picture lock, which means that we don't change any shots anymore. So we're working actually every day to finish in time, and then on the 16th we have our premiere in Zealand, in all the theaters there. It will not be a very festive big premiere as we hoped and the film, I think, deserved, because we can only have a limited audience. I'm sure it's the same all over the world. So that's sad, but we're going to make an event of it. In Zealand, everybody is completely excited. There are already theaters are sold out. There are 30 theaters that are sold out already in December, and because everybody in Zealand wants to see the film, there's going to be a huge tank in front of the cinema as long as the film plays in Vlissingen, which is one of the main cities and on the island of Walcheren. So yeah, it's exciting, and in December it will be in 200, 300 theaters in the Netherlands.
Wow, that's exciting. I mean, and it's well done for getting a war film to the screen. So because I know how hard a process it is to bring war epics to the screen, and I know some of the Band of Brothers actors, I know other directors, and it's a big task. So what would be your what would you want an audience to take away from the film? You've already touched on the fact it's getting young people to understand the war, but clearly you want them to be entertained. But also, when you're making a war epic like this, with the loss of a lot of Canadians, a loss of a lot of Dutch civilians there, you've got to get something deeper across as well. So if you were there on the steps of the theater, being able to talk to people coming out, what sort of reaction do you think you want from them?
Well, I hope they realize that living in complete freedom, apart from the coronavirus, that we have to wear a little mask, is not something that has always been like that. And how important it is that we have freedom. How important it is that you make the right choices, that you know what is real and what is not real, that you realize that it's not so long ago that Europe and the Netherlands was liberated, that there were very few people who actually did something, and that actually at the end of the day the Americans, the Canadians, and people from all over the place came here to liberate us, and how important that is, and that we should never forget that. And I want to the saddest thing maybe about the Corona crisis, going out in Corona crisis now, is that we were not able to invite people from Canada. We wanted to invite veterans, maybe the Prime Minister, people from Canada to have them at the opening night and to experience that we really made a film in honor of those Canadians. It says, as you pointed out, it has rarely or never been done, and therefore I'm really proud as a producer that we were able to honor the Canadians and the people who liberated us. And I hope that the audience that go out of the theater, if you go to a really good film, if you walk out of the theater, you're a different person for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so obviously, as a filmmaker, I hope that people will be a different person or be in a different world for the 10 minutes after they walked out of the theater, and that they realized what happened and how important it is, and feel thankful for the people that liberated us, and apart from that they thought it was a fantastic experience.
Fantastic war epic, yeah. So we've got, I mean, there's quite a few Canadians. There's Mike Bechtold watching, who's a very well-known, regarded Canadian historian. How will Canadians and Brits and Americans be able to see it? Is it Netflix?
Yeah, it will be available worldwide on Netflix. I think a couple months after we released the film, so it's they can see it every minute of the day worldwide for the next 10 years. So it will be very easy to watch.
Well, brilliant. I mean, it's again, and so the key elements I'm taking away is that you wanted to get to acknowledge the bravery of the Canadian sacrifice, but also the Dutch people, because I think that's something that we often forget, is just how terrible the winter of 44-45 was for the Dutch civilians at large, just in terms of just food, of nothing else, you know. And I had a show last night where we interviewed a British veteran, Alan King. Alan King was a tank radio operator, Sherman tanks. So he went all the way through Normandy. He was in Market Garden. He was in the Ardennes, and just talking about how towards the winter of 44, Dutch and civilians were stealing food from their tanks because they just had nothing to eat, and they weren't bothered by it, but it was just how desperate it was. So I clearly, with your Dutch characters, you are going to get across just some of the hardships they faced as well. It's a tough time. So, and that, again, I'll let you talk in a second, but that you're trying to do an entertaining movie, but you're also trying to remind people how terrible those times were. It can be quite a difficult thing to not lay on so much tragedy that people, get too emotionally burdened by it. You want them to also have a thrilling adventure as well. As I said earlier, it's a real struggle to balance those things. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. So the Canadians watching are very excited about to see it in Canada. So that's good. So anything else you want to get across about the film, or key themes you wanted to you glad you got into the movie or anything?
Well, it's true what you say, but the thing is, as a filmmaker, we don't want to rub everybody's face into the fact that there was a hunger winter in 45, because Montgomery decided to go straight to Berlin instead of liberate the Netherlands first. So you just touch the subject in it. You see it in the film, but it's not. You don't want to rub everybody's face in it, because I think the experience becomes stronger if you see it in a dramatic context, rather than that it becomes really something you direct the attention to. So yeah, hopefully this film gives a good picture of a lot of different sides of how it was to be in a war, as a soldier, as a soldier on the wrong side, as somebody who does nothing. The people of Zealand. The whole island of Zealand was bombed. The dikes were bombed. It was completely flooded, by the way. So nobody had dry clothes. There was no food. It was just horrible, like the whole end of the Second World War and the whole Second World War was. So yeah, a lot of different angles, and hopefully we did it in the right balance and right context, so that people will have a meaningful and exciting experience once they go and watch the film.
Yeah, and as you say, it is a film, not a documentary. You're not there to lecture people. You're there to entertain them, but also educate them, kind of subliminally behind the scenes. So just again, so Netflix is it January? Did you say January or next?
No, later. It will be April, I think.
April. Okay, so people have got a bit of a wait to go, but that will be, and then eventually, I guess it'll be available on Blu-ray and DVD at some point. And
yeah. I think 18 months after the Netflix release, we're able to sell it on DVD and
right.
So it will be hopefully a success and widely available.
Okay, so my final question. I know you haven't finished this one yet, but would you go into World War II again for a movie? Do you want to do something else for a while, or would you love a chance at doing another historical epic?
Would love it. It was the best experience. This was I think my 26th feature, and by far the most exciting one. And the bigger the better. And to make meaningful, big films is what you want as a producer, because I made a lot of romantic comedies and all kinds of films, but to make to have the opportunity to make such a big film for the Netherlands is fantastic. Really, it's the
brilliant.
Best. So hopefully I'll get a chance to make a big film like this in the hopefully near future.
Well, that would certainly be good, because there's so many stories. Every time on Twitter someone says what story hasn't been told on film that should be, there's always lists and lists of things, of Monte Cassino and the Malta and the siege, but there's so many things we haven't touched in World War II. So anyway, I think we've come full circle now. So thank you very much, Alan, for joining us, and thank you for watching. People have really enjoyed what we're doing, and it'll get more views, the show, later on when the Americans get up, and because it's still early in the morning for those in California, what have you. So thank you very much for joining in. I'm hoping maybe later on down the line, when the film is out, perhaps you come on again and talk about it again, or a member of the cast or something, or a writer or something. We'd love to have you back. So that's it. Brilliant stuff. So in terms of, for those watching, I've got 2 days of no shows, so nothing tomorrow and Saturday, but Sunday you're bringing you 2 shows. We've got David O'Keefe on in the afternoon talking about the Dieppe raid of 1942, and then in the evening Eric Ratcliffe is coming on talking about the US Army Air Force raid on Kassel. So we've got 2 exciting shows on Sunday, and then lots more shows I'm working on all the time. I'm putting huge hours into this at the moment. So I'll see you all very soon. Please don't forget to click our subscribe button, press the little bell to get notifications. Please check out our Patreon page. There's a link to the movie website in the description below. You can see the trailer there. That's linked below. If you haven't seen the trailer already, that's there below. You can check out other information about the film. So Alan, again, thank you very much for joining me. Have you enjoyed it? Was it fun?
Great. It was great and I'll come back if you want me. And
I'd love to have you back. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing the film under the intention of your audience.
Well, yeah, we have a lot of historians watch this, and I said as soon as that it came up, there people are saying this is an important one to tackle. How are they doing it? So I thought, well, I'll ask someone from the film. Why not just go to the producers and see if they can provide me someone? So I got the top dog. So fantastic. Okay. So thank everybody for watching. I'll see you all on Sunday. This is Paul Woodadge for World War II TV. Seeing you all again soon. Thank you very much. Bye.